Thank you for joining us for the virtual continuation of Bridge Builders Conversations with Interesting People, presented by the Clinton Foundation and sponsored by Colson Oil. My name is Stephanie Street, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Clinton Foundation. Tonight, we're joined by two very special guests. They both are New York Times best-selling authors, Ibtihaj Muhammad and Chelsea Clinton. Ibtihaj is an entrepreneur, activist, Olympic medalist in fencing, author of the children's book, The Proudest Blue, and in 2016 was named one of Time magazine's most influential people in the world. Chelsea is vice chair of the Clinton Foundation, a teacher, public health advocate, mom to Charlotte, Aiden, and Jasper, and a prolific children's writer. In fact, Ibtihaj is featured in Chelsea's newest book, She Persisted in Sports. We are thrilled they're both here tonight to talk about breaking barriers and, of course, persisting. Ibtihaj's book, The Proudest Blue, and all of Chelsea's books are available for purchase online at the Clinton Museum store. I encourage you to read them to the young minds in your life. They are powerful and inspiring. Again, thanks to all of you for tuning in this evening for what I know will be a fun and a lively conversation. So I'll now turn this over to you, Chelsea, to kick things off.
Oh, Stephanie, thank you so much for that warm introduction. And I want to thank everyone at the Clinton Presidential Center for helping to convene us in this virtual space together. And it's just always such a pleasure and privilege to be with my friend Ibtihaj Muhammad. And I am so happy to see you. And of course, wish that we could be together. But thank you for joining us this evening.
Thanks for having me. It's always good to see your face. You are my human interaction for the day, so I appreciate you.
Yeah, well, I think if I didn't have my kids, I also would be low on the human interaction vertical. And, Ibtihaj, as you know, like Jasper basically just adores his big brother and big sister, but our kids, Charlotte and Aiden, love you partly because they love your Barbie, which I've shared with you before, and I want to talk about that. But first, since I think most people know you as an Olympian, and know that you kind of were on our, kind of amazing 2016 team, and that you're a fencer, I think I know your story, but I imagine a lot of people joining us this evening don't. Could you talk a little bit about how you got into fencing, kind of why fencing and the road to the 2016 Olympics?
Yeah, like you said, I am a fencer. I've been fencing since I was 12 years old. In my family, it wasn't really a question of whether or not I would play sports. It was more so like, which sport would I play? My parents have always put a really strong emphasis on their children being involved in sport. They saw it as a tool for me and my brother and sisters to not only be physically active, but also like a healthy way for us to interact with our peers. And at 12 years old, my mom and I were just driving past a local high school. We saw fencing for the first time. We didn't know what it was, but we knew that the athletes had on long jackets, they had on pants, and we knew that the uniform for fencing would uniquely accommodate my religious beliefs as a Muslim. I started wearing hijab at 12, coincidentally. And when I played other sports like volleyball or I ran track and my teammates would wear shorts or tank tops, in fencing, it was just different. I was in uniform with everyone else. I didn't have to add anything. There was no addition to the uniform. And to be honest, it was kind of the first time in my life I really felt a part of the team, right? I wasn't seen as being a girl. No one could see my skin color. No one knew that I wore hijab. I just kind of got to exist and thrive as an athlete. And I love that it was just about how good I could be. And I think that sensation, that feeling that I had from a really young age in the sport of fencing, like this desire to just like be better, I don't know, it was kind of like addicting in a way that fencing was like a roller coaster I just kind of never got off of. I didn't know at 12 that, fencing would be this really long journey with these sharp turns and like dips and dives. And I would find myself on an Olympic team. But it has been such a crazy ride. And in, I would say, like, really good ways. It's taught me so much about myself. It's taught me how resilient I can be. And when I have my eyes set on something, I feel like there's really nothing that stands in between me and that goal, aside from like my faith and me willing to put in the hard work. You know, qualifying for a US Olympic team, I honestly believe is like the hardest thing on earth. When I think about it, I'm like, man, that did happen. That was crazy. But definitely something that, I don't know, I feel like it happened the way that it was supposed to on my journey through sport.
Well, and one of the things that I now think about as a parent to both a daughter and sons is how important it is for my daughter to be in sports, to kind of feel that kind of connection to her own strength, and to kind of learn how to persist kind of through sports, which I think historically have been so often kind of conceived of and thought of as kind of a place for boys and men more than for girls and women. And I just am so kind of thankful to your parents, and kind of really look up to parents who understood, kind of in earlier generations, that it was really important actually for their daughters as well as their sons to compete. And, I know because I've heard you talk about kind of how disappointed you were when you didn't make the 2012 team, but that you just like refused to give up, and kept going. And that clearly it was so much, I think, Ibtihaj, about your competitive spirit and your love for the sport, as illustrated by, like, when we spoke, a few months ago, you shared like your parents have your Olympic medal, right? You don't, because I was thinking like you would maybe sleep with it at night. I don't know if I were an Olympic, I would like, maybe never take it off. Can you just talk a little bit about kind of that experience from 2012 to 2016 and how you just kept going?
Well, my first national team was in 2010. And I remember, like, I guess for context, when I graduated from college, I really was riding.
You were an All-American.
Yeah.
Like, I have to adequately brag on you.
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's like NCAA fencing, and then there's like professional fencing. It's like a totally different beast. I was embarking on this journey that was really uncharted territory for me. I'd never been to a senior competition. I had no world ranking. So I remember my first competition in like 2009, my first World Cup. I think I was ranked like 270th or something like that. And so people thought I was crazy, right? That when I graduated from Duke, that I was, my goal was to make a national team. I'd never qualified for a cadet team or junior team. And in my sport, the people who are on the senior national team normally have made teams like in their younger years. And the way that I saw it, because it had never been done on the senior level, and my weapon by a woman of color, it just felt like something that I had to do. Not that I necessarily had the experience to get it done or had the resume to get it done. I just really believed in myself. I felt like I knew that there was untapped talent there. I switched coaches, and when I made my first team in 2010, it was just kind of like one team after the other. And again, like, it seems so crazy, right? But when the first team that I made, Olympic qualification started for the 2012 team. And I don't think that I really had a strong sense of how to qualify for the team or had the experience to qualify. So when I failed to qualify in 2012, I feel like everyone around me was really sad. And me, I was like, well, didn't happen. And it was more so of, that team wasn't meant for me. That's kind of how I always saw it. But it also, I think, really motivated me in a way to like put my heels down and like dig hard for the next 4 years to qualify for that next Olympic team. And I think that for a lot of people, sometimes we can be deterred from a dream, when it doesn't happen the first time. And I try to remind myself that it wasn't meant for me in that moment, but that doesn't mean that, down the road, I can't accomplish whatever it is. And it was a hard 4 years, right? Because you are riding on faith and just like this dream. And you have a lot of people around you who don't believe in you, who are going to tell you, they don't think it's for you or that you can't do it. You're not strong enough. You're not fast enough. You don't have what it takes. And it was just me constantly believing that I could do it. Right. And again, it's still one of these pinch me moments in my life. Like I forget that I have an Olympic medal because it is so rare, right? To have, and not a lot of people in the world have them, but I really believe in the value of hard work and like self-determination. Like above all, I feel like I've always been able to like motivate myself and push myself to achieve the things that I want.
Yeah, and Ibtihaj, I think you've also been so extraordinarily honest and brave in your honesty about how hard those years were, partly because you weren't getting the support that you deserved at kind of the highest echelon of your sport by teammates or coaches. And I know that kind of your bravery and honesty has also unlocked like other athletes, and especially kind of women athletes, talking about their struggles. Do you think we've made progress kind of in the last few years, partly because you and other women athletes are talking about what you've had to confront, like being among the best or the best in the world? Or do you think we still have a lot of work to do, or maybe both?
I think that progress in terms of representation and inclusion in sport can be hard to track, right? Now that it's been done, right, we have the younger generation, I think, able to unconsciously grasp their aspirations and be able to see themselves in it. But I don't know if I like to necessarily put a measure on it. Like I can think of those moments where I was treated unfairly by referees or by coaches, sometimes even national coaches. And so to say that because I did it, right, or because now there's more little black and brown kids in the sport, that's progress. I I want to also see like mindsets change, right? I want to see people really hold themselves accountable for their actions, the things that they say, and the way that they treat people. I think that my journey in sport would have been a lot easier if I didn't face that, just that pushback and that like the misogynistic, sexist, often bigoted actions of others. And I think that needs to change, but it starts from within, right? It starts in our homes, it starts in our hearts. And so once we are able to acknowledge that these like isms exist, right, within sport from the top down, that's when I think we'll really start to see change. So again, I don't really know if I'd like to say like, yes, there's been progress, because I think that it, when we start to think like that, sometimes I think we negate the struggle that people may be in, like in this moment. I know that there are other people who may look like me who have very similar struggles, even though, my Olympic team was 4 years ago.
I think, something I think a lot about is kind of people who mistake progress for success, who sort of, oh, there is more representation and now we're done. We're like, no, like more representation is the beginning, right? It's the beginning of the work. It is not the totality of the work. And I know I, was joking a little bit earlier about your Barbie doll, but I actually think it's just really important. I think it's really important that, for my kids, like my daughter worships Simone Biles, like worships her, thinks that she is the greatest gymnast of all time. And that she gets on her little, admittedly Simone Biles, like branded leotards and like tumbles around and she's like, just like Simone. And I'm like, maybe, like, I didn't, maybe if you work really hard, right? Like maybe. But I think I see the kind of galvanization, like in my own kids, of like looking to you and to athletes that kind of have broken barriers and proved what's possible in their own lives. Like, is that when you decided to, write your children's book, become so outspoken about not only your kind of what you have achieved, but also kind of the journey, and then clearly becoming a children's book author. Like, is that what you hoped would happen? Like, or was it just something that you felt like you had to do? Because I know you have some really important little people in your own life.
No, I think that your kids are exactly what I hope would happen, right? That no matter what you look like, no matter your physical ability, you truly believe that you can do anything. And right, it's what I think is so cool about children's books is it gives us the opportunity to help our kids see themselves in the pages, whether it's my niece who may very much so look like me and like one day wear hijab, or if it's, your kid who may look through the Proudest Blue and have an understanding of what hijab is and what it means and what it looks like to be strong in the face of, bullying. And that's one of the gifts that I think that we can impart to our kids, right? Is to teach them to celebrate the differences or celebrate the things that make us all different, as opposed to, kind of turning a frown and thinking that someone who is different from you, that there's something wrong with them.
And, sadly, because in the last few years, bullying has become so common, right?
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, at the elementary school and the middle school level, schools across the country just reporting like unprecedented levels of bullying, especially targeting girls, especially targeting Black and brown girls, in some parts of the country, especially targeting, Jewish children who have identifiably Jewish last names, especially targeting Muslim children, especially Muslim girls who wear hijab. I think, unfortunately, we have had a real epidemic of bullying that is, certainly not disconnected from the people who have been in power and kind of the rhetoric that they have used and the mainlining of hate. So I just think kind of the work in helping kids know how to stand up to bullies safely, how to support each other in standing up to bullies, ensuring that no one ever feels alone, I think is so important, maybe even more important than when you first kind of had the idea to write the book.
When you wrote your children's book, She Persisted, which I love, and I actually have, because I don't know if you guys can see, but I'm obsessed and can't wait to read it to my niece once I'm able to get back to New York. But when you wrote this, right, it's full of incredible women. What inspired you to write it? And what did you originally intend to write a series?
I didn't originally intend to write a series. I mean, I wrote, I'd written for older kids. And then when I became a parent, became really aware of how centered, at least it felt like to me, like picture books were on boys and on kind of male characters, that even the stories with farm animals, like the cows or the ducks often had boy names, or kind of the main characters would be kind of, rambunctious and fun and funny little boys, and just not as frequently little girls. And so I was aware of this. And then kind of we had the infamous moment of Senator Warren trying to read the great Coretta Scott King's letter about Jeff Sessions kind of into the Senate record in January 2017. And, that her Senate Republican colleagues, censured her. And Mitch McConnell kind of cast himself as the victim of this moment and, said, she was given a warning, and nevertheless she persisted. And, I watched all this unfold on C-SPAN, because that's how I roll. Like, I was watching it all unfold on C-SPAN because what else was I going to be doing, that evening. And just really, Ibtihaj, in that moment was thinking about, oh my God, in our country, so often we've had to rely on women who have persisted. including Senator Warren and the great Mrs. King. And I was just thinking about how so often, like, I think Mrs. King is positioned as like just Dr. King's widow, when she was a civil rights leader, like in her college, like when she met him, she was a civil rights leader, like throughout their relationship together. She was a civil rights leader, like after his assassination. And so I was just thinking too, like how often amazing women are still seen as like the wife of someone, or the daughter of someone, or the student of someone. And so I just wanted to I wrote the first book of kind of in the rush of like a response to this moment. And like, as a mom who wanted to share these stories with my kids, of really women who've inspired me. And, I write about FloJo in the first book because I remember being a little girl and watching the Seoul Olympics and watching her like obliterate the 100 and 200 meter records, and watching just the joy and the pride that she felt. Meant so much to me as a kid. Like, I don't think I had seen women really like claim their joy and achievement in that way. And then I've always loved sports, like as I've shared with you now over many conversations. Like I could have never been you. Like I was like a kid in like various sports where like the coaches were like, we really appreciate Chelsea. It's the same like thing I got in church choir. Sing to my life, where they would be like, we really appreciate her. Like, she's always on time. Like she works hard, she tries hard. And yet, even though I never had an iota of the talent that you have, or the women that I write about and She Persisted in Sports have, like the strength and the persistence that I saw, like on the mat, on the field, like on the court, has really inspired me in my own life. And also that I still like, I run, I cycle, not during COVID, but like in non-COVID times, like play soccer with my friends. I'm still like the worst person on the soccer field. But I enjoy it. And I think there's a real lesson there too, that like we can enjoy things without like being Ibtihaj Muhammad. Like we can enjoy like without, being on the national women's soccer team. Like, right. I think there's something there too, that I think really I'm hyper aware of now as a parent who like, has a little girl who loves gymnastics and is like probably not going to be the next Simone Biles. So to try to help her kind of, but she might be like,
I mean, here's hoping.
We're recording this. So, in like, 15 years you can come back and she could be like, I told you. But like, I want her to like enjoy the work and the effort, and the sport itself, and to find her competitive spirit too. But to love it, maybe not kind of in spite of or irregardless, but like alongside whatever her own outcome may be.
I mean, I think that your story of FloJo and seeing her compete at the Olympics, I have very similar memories of watching the Olympics like growing up. I had an aunt who was she worked for NBC Olympics. And so we literally had a family member who would travel to every single Olympic game. So I felt very much so like a part of Team USA in a sense. And even though I am not a runner, I like saw myself in the athletes, right? And that's what I think is so cool about sport. And that's the power of sport, right? Even though I'm not a boxer, I like see myself in Muhammad Ali, and not just what he did in the boxing ring, but also outside of it, like just trying to emulate those really strong attributes that I find in my sports heroes. And when I look at She Persisted and the amazing like roster of women that you've included in the book, they're people that I've looked up to, right? Like Serena and Venus, I think, are at the epicenter of just like heroes in my life. But even like someone like Christina Yamaguchi, love her, right? And I remember meeting her and like fangirling, right? Because it just conjures up all these cool memories. And even though like you said, everyone will not go to the Olympics, may not have a professional career in sport. I think that sport just teaches us so much about ourselves, about our teammates, how to work well with others. But I think at the end of the day, I think one of the best things that come from sports is just a real appreciation of hard work and learning to appreciate and value the things that you bring to the table.
I totally agree. And I think too, even when you're in an individual sport, right, you're also still part of a team, right? You still have coaches, you have kind of people you're kind of competing with and alongside, and just, I think, to help kids really understand how to work to be the best for themselves and their team has a really profound value too. And I am aware of how like different in this distance moment that we're living through, at least hopefully if you're being kind of public health minded and conscientious living through, how for my kids it is, and I think they have amazing like gym and ballet and gymnastics and kind of PE Zoom teachers who I just want to give a massive shout out to, who have been amazing. But it is different, right? Because they're like trying to keep track with whatever's happening on Zoom and trying to like pay attention to Zoom, like while they're working on their, I don't know, somersault
Right.
or arabesque or kind of jumping jacks. So I do think it is different in this moment, but we're still really committed to them engaging in sport just for all the reasons that we've talked about.
I mean, in this moment, it's a great way to keep everybody sane. Like I think that honestly, like running has kept me sane through quarantine. And like as someone who quarantines alone, it just like trying to be active with gyms closed. And like you said, you can't really work out in the way that you've become used to. Just finding something that gets me outside and gets me moving. And I think that's the same thing for kids. So huge shout out to all the gym teachers out there who are leading gym classes over Zoom, but just trying to tire your kids out before it's bedtime.
100%. Ibtihaj, one of the things that I have found really offensive over the years, although it has become a particularly kind of prevalent in the last few years, given, again, who is in the White House only, thankfully, for a few more weeks, kind of the posture around athletes to like stick to your sport, like as if you're not a citizen.
Right.
Like we're not going to tell people who are professional doctors to like not have a view about healthcare policy debates in our country, and we're not going to tell lawyers like not have a view about conversations around the First Amendment or healthcare or anything else. And I know you have just persisted in being like outspoken about what you think is right and wrong. And I think it's been really inspiring to see how many athletes across so many different sports, admittedly though with a real shout out to the WNBA, but so many around like across so many sports who really have, I think, use their platforms in thoughtful ways to raise awareness about some of the very real challenges in our country, but also to raise awareness about some of the people who are trying to tackle those challenges. Can you just reflect a little bit on how you've navigated that? Kind of when people tell you like you should just stick to fencing, or why can't you just be a fencer?
Well, I was on Team USA for 10 years, and I feel like I spent my entire athletic career focused on sport, right? Because so much of sport is mental. And I felt like as the only woman of color on my team, the only one who had to deal with like very real discriminatory moments and having faced so much pushback, I felt like if I didn't focus on sport and I focused on those things that were out of my control, like the way someone else treated me, or maybe I don't know, a situation that would happen, I felt like I was putting my athletic career in jeopardy. So I spent so much time kind of ignoring those outside factors and just focusing on competing. And when I qualified for my first Olympic team in 2016, it was at the height of the then presidential election. It came on the heels of a proposed Muslim ban from Trump. And I felt like I didn't have a choice in that moment, right? There was no other choice, in my opinion, other than to use my platform and to speak out, right? I knew I was going to be the first Muslim woman to represent Team USA at the games wearing hijab. And this was like a very visible moment for Muslim women on Team USA. And like just existing in sport, I was challenging a lot of the misconceptions that people have about Islam and like Muslim women. I'm not Arab, I'm not from another country. Like English is my first language. I wear hijab by choice. I'm not oppressed, and I'm very vocal and comfortable, using my voice. And I just felt like this is my opportunity to help people understand more about someone who looks like me, and really, I think, create a more accurate narrative of the Muslim community. Like that was my goal. And so much of that was just done by existing. But I feel like I was one of the only people on Team USA who had to answer really tough questions during the Olympics around the proposed Muslim ban and what that meant for people who look like me. And I think as athletes, at least for me in a predominantly white sport, I confront racial situations every day. But what I've come to realize as an athlete with, like a substantial platform is that I have the ability to speak to the younger generation. And in 2016, and even now, it just felt like an exceptionally good time, right, to show people the best of what our country has to offer and really, challenge people to, I think, be more inclusive and to be more accepting of others, and to really, I think, join this fight of, racial justice in a way.
And I think part of the challenge, though, has been even when kind of there's been a attention paid to the travesty of what was first kind of candidate Trump's rhetoric, and then kind of the tragedy of the Muslim ban and the stain on our country, is that reporters were like just asking you these questions. Like they should have been asking like the white like athletes on Team USA, like how did they feel about this too? Because I think too often we have like expected, especially like Black women in our country, to like carry way too much weight and like justify kind of your humanity, and also like explain to people like what human rights are. We should be asking like white people like what their reactions are and like what are they going to do to ensure that we actually have human rights in our country and that those human rights are respected and protected in our country. So I'm sorry that you were the only one being asked those questions.
Right. I mean, when you think about it, like on paper that like a Muslim ban theoretically shouldn't affect someone who looks like me, right? Or it shouldn't affect me rather, because I'm, born and raised in New Jersey. But it was only, I think, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 months after that proposed ban, only a few weeks after, the travel ban actually went through, I was held at, the airport. My sister and I, we missed our flight. We were coming from a World Cup after representing Team USA. Like we were detained at the airport. So that was when I think, like I realized that actually this does affect Muslims in general, right? It has very real effects for people who look like me. And to your point, I want other people to care as much for others as they do about themselves. We can't all wait until something directly affects us in order to act, right? If we truly believe that this country is, equal for everyone, and we want it, and we truly want it to be that, we have to be willing to fight for not just ourselves, but also our neighbors. So yes, I would love for my teammates to have, maybe fielded or, been able to kind of like field some of those questions that I was getting at the Olympics. But I've become comfortable. Really, I think just learning to use my voice, right? I don't know if everybody's comfortable doing that, but this is a moment in time, especially like during a pandemic at the very height of this movement for Black lives. This is a moment in time and a moment in our history where we all have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And having those uncomfortable conversations with family members, with friends, even with ourselves, right? And really trying to help move our country forward, because it's been stagnant for a long time. Some would argue for over 400 years. But also I feel like we're coming off the heels of a really problematic administration. So there's a lot of correction that has to happen over the next 4 years. And I think that the hard part was, turning the table and getting a new administration into the White House. It's like now the really difficult work starts, where we have to like repair, but also try to move this country forward.
Amen. And I think, we all are going to be called in ways that we've never been called before. And it's just, I think, incumbent on each of us to answer that call. And Ibtihaj, I couldn't agree more. It's like within ourselves, within our families, within our communities, and then certainly like, across our country. On a little bit of a kind of different topic and like switching back to sport, what do you think the Olympics are going to look like when we finally have them? Like, how are our athletes feeling? Like, for your friends that are still on Team USA, for some of the younger athletes that I know you've helped mentor, like, how are people feeling? And also, how are those of us, again, who are not former Olympians and will never be Olympians? Like, what can we do to help support, all these athletes who thought they were going to be competing in Tokyo, this summer and didn't? So like, how are people feeling? And just, I think I'm probably not the only person on this webinar who would just want to know, like, what can we do to help kind of support and cheer them on in certain times?
Oof, what a difficult question. It is, but I think that sport is very similar, or athletes are very similar to the rest of us in this sense, in that there is so much uncertainty. I can't imagine what it's like to be training for the unknown. One of the cool things about competing for Team USA, being a professional athlete, you always have, these benchmarks in place and these things that happen because there's a timeline. And when you have this kind of curveball thrown in of, we don't know when your next qualifier is going to happen, when your next World Cup will happen, or even if the Olympic Games will happen. And so I think that puts a lot of pressure on athletes. My really close friends who I know are training for this next Olympic team, they're going hard in the paint, right? They are training as if their qualifiers will be held in February and March. And a lot of the qualifiers are due to happen in Europe. And we all know that a lot of Europe started a lockdown a few days ago, and that will last for at the least over the next 4 weeks. So I don't know if it's realistic to believe that there will be Olympic qualifications happening in February or March. But I don't know. I think at least for me, to get through these moments, I kind of hold on to that rope of hope. I think that keeps me positive and it keeps me going. And I would imagine that that's what athletes are doing right now, hoping that the Olympics will happen, hoping that we'll have a vaccine that people are willing to take that will work, that's safe, and that will get not only athletes, but also their families and other spectators able to see them compete, in Tokyo in 2021. But there's uncertainty around everything. Like, what do we know? We don't know anything. Like, when you think about it, it's just, I feel like 2020 has been one big question mark.
Yeah, I think that's a really apt description. because I was thinking my friend from Stanford, Dr. Leroy Sims, is the doctor for the NBA. So he actually oversaw the bubble, which, extraordinary achievement, literally thousands of people, right? Athletes, coaches, like, back office staff, support staff, like the hundreds of people that were there from ESPN. But we can't put like all of the Olympics like in a bubble in the same way. For those of us who have loved and love sport, and we're so incredibly grateful to the sacrifices that, especially our NBA and WNBA players made to like live in these bubbles to be able to compete. I certainly hope that we will have an Olympics again, provided that everything is safe and can be done in a way to protect the athletes and their families and everyone else involved.
Have you talked to your friend, the doctor at Stanford? Have you talked to them at all about what it would look like to have an Olympics?
I haven't, but he actually was the doctor first for the USA track and field team. He was at the 2016 Olympics.
Awesome.
The track and field team. So I should ask him. So all these people now who are listening to me, who can hold me accountable for following up with Leroy. I think he took a well-deserved break after overseeing the bubble, as he should. Ibtihaj, I know we only have a few minutes left, and I do have a final question, but we sort of referred to your best-selling book, but we kind of touched that it's a little bit about kind of bullying. But could you just share a little bit about the story before we move into the final question? Because I don't want to miss the chance to have you talk about it.
Okay. Well, I actually have her with me.
Oh, great.
Love her. So The Proudest Blue is literally a story of hijab and family. It is written from the perspective of my younger sister, Faiza, who sees my other sister, Asiya, wear hijab to school for the first time. And what I wanted in writing my first children's book was the opportunity to make sure that there were brown characters on the pages, which I know I didn't really see growing up, but also to have the opportunity to kind of tell the story of hijab from my own perspective, or like our perspective as Muslims. So I feel like the book is definitely a window into the Muslim community, but also a lens. And so when Asiya experiences bullying on her first day of wearing hijab, you kind of see her response to it, right? And one of my favorite lines of the book is it comes from like mom, and mom saying that, the words of the bully are not yours to carry. And you see, the older sister kind of drop those words and not take them with her. But you also see her younger sister, my younger sister, Faiza, kind of see her sister be strong in this moment. And I think it just becomes a teaching moment for everyone, not just in the book, but also for those who read them, that like, you don't have to carry with you the things that people say that may hurt you. But also it's just an opportunity for us to learn to celebrate, I think, the things that may make us different. And that was really, I think, my goal in writing this book. And right now we're actually working on, I'm following in your footsteps, Chelsea. Yes, The Proudest Blue will be a series. So it's so exciting and so much fun to work on.
Well, I can't wait.
Yes, I actually would love to know when you, or when we, I guess, all can expect your next book, and what will it be about?
Well, I am working on my next She Persisted book. I owe the illustrator the kind of the text before Thanksgiving, so the pressure is on, because I know, Ibtihaj, as you know, like these extraordinarily talented illustrators, take many months, as they should, to create images that really kind of animate.
Is this Alexandra?
Alexandra, yeah.
Oh my gosh, she is phenomenal. Can I just show everyone how good this is?
There you are, Ibtihaj.
Oh my God, love. I need to frame it. I mean, would that be weird to frame a picture of yourself? But I'm like obsessed. I just think it's so beautiful. Oh my goodness, the book, you guys have to get it. I love it. Alexandra, very talented.
super talented. So yes, I am working on another She Persisted book to be announced soon. But Ibtihaj, thank you so much for being with us. But we have to ask a final question that we ask kind of everyone who's part of our Bridge Builders program, which is just like, what is your call to action? What would you like to ask the people who are joining us this evening to do? I will ask them to buy your book and kind of read your book with every kind of young reader in their lives. But like, what would you ask of our audience, especially given kind of all of the recent news?
Mhm. I would ask everyone on the call today to, one, stay safe, right? To wear a mask and keep yourself, your family, your loved ones, and also the people that you don't know safe, so we can navigate and hopefully get past this pandemic sooner rather than later. But also, I would love to see people stay engaged. This past election, we were out in record numbers. We really showed up, I think, for ourselves as Americans, and we I don't know, it's just like a historic moment, right? And to see people so engaged and committed to change, I would just love to kind of continue that momentum, especially for those who live in, a key state like Georgia that will have another, what is it? Like,
Two Senate elections, January 5th.
right. So I don't know. I just feel like I don't want us to take our foot off the gas. Like, I really believe in our country. I believe in us as a collective community to really, I don't know, just be committed to a better world. And so my call to action is to stay engaged, to stay hopeful, and to stay safe.
I could not have said that better. Ibtihaj, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to everyone at the Clinton Presidential Center who helped convene us this evening. Thank you to my friend and colleague, Stephanie Street, for kicking us off. Thank you to our audience. And I just want to echo what Ibtihaj said, to certainly stay engaged and to stay engaged safely. So we're wishing everyone health and safety over these coming weeks and months ahead. Thank you all very much. Have a good evening.
Thanks for having me.